What's up, YouTube? It's Kenny again on the Sunday. I wanted to make another little bit of a different kind of video today. I'm not going to do my normal disclaimer, all right, because we're not really going to talk about stocks. I wanted to make an attempt to connect with you guys by just kind of telling you a little bit about myself, my background, where I came from, just give you opportunity to get to know me a little bit, and maybe that'll give you an idea of where I'm coming from just in general. All right, so if you're not interested in something like this, that's fine. If you are, I'm happy to connect with you guys on a little bit of a deeper level than just making videos about stocks. So I was born in Gulfport, Mississippi, on the coast. All right. When I was a kid, we moved to Texas when I was, 4 or 5 years old. All right. We went back and forth to Gulfport to like visit family and stuff throughout my childhood. And, but for the most part, I feel like I'm from Texas. Okay. Because I grew up there my whole life. Grew up in a town called Haltom City, Texas. All right. Lived there for the vast majority of my life. Still, when I go back home, that's my home. That's my area, even though I don't have a house there or anything. My son lives over there. I have an 18-year-old son. He'll be 18 next month. All right. So, there's a lot of things that I could talk about, when trying to give you an idea of who I am and where I came from. All right. But we'll just focus on the main things because I don't want to do a 2-hour video autobiography. All right. So growing up as a kid, one of the main things, or pretty much the main thing, was music for me. Okay. My biological dad was like a biker in the Hells Angels and stuff like that. I only met him a couple times. My stepdad was a fireman growing up. Okay. I grew up poor. Now my mom didn't really work. My dad was a fireman, so he made okay money, and we did have a house rather than an apartment. But we lived in kind of a rough area, a field behind the house, and beyond that was like some government housing type stuff, and that's where most of my friends were, and there was some trailer park up the way there, and a lot of my friends lived there growing up. So I grew up pretty rough and pretty poor, and fought a lot and did a lot of things that, I could tell stories for hours, and you guys would probably not even believe the stories because of the crazy shit that I did growing up. All right, but anyway, my stepdad's family, they all played musical instruments, and they lived way out in Weatherford, and we'd go out there, and every time we would go out there, it was just a big, grandma's on the piano, grandpa's playing the fiddle, my dad's playing the banjo, my uncle's on the guitar, etc., etc., etc. And as more family would come from out of town and stuff like that, they all played instruments. So every family get together was a music session, So I was lucky to have been exposed to that at a really young age, and had the opportunity to put my hands on a lot of different instruments at a really young age. Okay. Now, here's kind of something interesting and crazy, is that nobody in my biological family plays music. I think one of my uncles plays the guitar a little bit or something, but none of the people in my biological family were really musically inclined. But somehow I ended up with this just natural ability for music that actually, surpassed all of these people in my stepdad's family who had been playing music perpetually for generations, you know what I mean? So I picked up a lot at a really early age, and by the time I was 10 years old, okay, I had taught a friend of mine how to play guitar a little bit. His dad had taught him some. And by the time I was 10, we had written 30 or 40 songs. I mean, I was already writing songs and playing around with recording music in primitive ways all the way back at the age of 10. And that was a theme throughout all of my childhood and on into adulthood, okay? By the time I was 15 years old, I was playing in a heavy metal band, playing in clubs all around Dallas-Fort Worth. My mom would have to sign release forms so I could play at a lot of these clubs because I was so young. And I had the opportunity to play with some pretty big name acts of the time, like Rigor Mortis, Napalm Death, some of these bands that at the time were really popular and would come play at these clubs, and my band got to open for them and stuff. And sometimes, anyway, so yeah, it was a theme throughout my childhood. So, at this time, I'm 15 years old and earlier, and I'm solely focused on the music. Okay, so like, I wasn't interested in school at all, and I had this like raging IQ, and so I wasn't trying to listen to anything anybody had to say except me. So I didn't do well in school. I dropped out, tried to go back, dropped out again, but at that time, like, I was playing clubs. I mean, I thought my music was taking me somewhere. Okay. And so it goes with me and education, the traditional education system. Okay. I proceeded to, after that, play in a lot more bands with different styles of music, stuff throughout the 90s, and, doing cover bands, and, played in a lot of different bands. And a lot of the people that I played with in those times are still real good friends of mine now. So, not too long after, at a certain point, I just came to this realization that, man, I'm dumping so much money into the music. I'm just dumping money and money and money, because if any of my subscribers are musicians or no musicians, that society doesn't really value artists or musicians. Like, they want to have the benefit of listening to the music, but they don't care if the musician actually gets paid, for the most part. So you're going and playing in these clubs, and they tell you, oh yeah, we're going to pay you this one, and then they don't ever pay you what they're supposed to pay you. And you just end up dumping a whole bunch of your own money into it. And so at a certain point, I decided, well, I'm just going to start doing this on my own. And then so I was doing recording and writing my own songs. And then the digital age came around, and I started buying software and really being able to come up with much better recordings and stuff later on. And I've been doing that ever since. Okay. And I record, a song a year or something like that, just when I'm inspired. So I have, pretty good number of songs that are already written, finished, recorded, whatever. And because I play so many instruments, I play like 15 different instruments. Pretty much every instrument I could put my hands on, I can at least play some. And so a lot of the songs that I've written and recorded over the years, I play all the instruments. So I play the drums, the bass, the guitar, the lead, the vocals, everything on these songs. And, other things as I need them, like keyboards or shakers and stuff like that. So anyway, so then I got married, had a kid, got my CDL, and started driving. Prior to that, I climbed telephone poles for a really long time, and then I moved into field engineering for a while in that, in telephone and cable TV and stuff like that. And then I climbed communications towers for a while. Then shortly after that, I got married, had a kid, got my commercial driver's license, and I've been living off of driving in one form or another ever since. I was over the road for a while after my son was born, right before I first went on the road. And then I came off the road because I didn't like being gone with him, being a baby. Drove concrete trucks, drove and operated concrete pumps, the ones with the big boom arm that you use remote controls. I did that for a long time. And then my son's 17. He was about to turn 17, and I came back on the road. And that's been about almost 2 years that I've been back on the road. Before that, like in between there, after I stopped doing pumps, I did Uber and Lyft for a while. So that's more driving. Okay. And then after that, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. I had some problems with my feet. One of my feet swelled up real big. Went to the hospital. And all this stuff happened. I found out I had type 2 diabetes. Okay, so I had health issues that prevented me from working for a year and a half, 2 years, something like that. And that pretty much destroyed the relationship that I was in at the time. And split up with her. We're still good friends, and came back on the road. My son was living with me at the time. He's now living back with his mom. And so then I'm on the road, and I find myself like really thinking with my health issues and stuff, what am I going to do in 10 years? Because at this point, you know, being a musician for so long, I'd not really made any plans for my future. And I know it doesn't necessarily have to do with being a musician, but that lifestyle doesn't really lend itself well to saving for your future. You know what I mean? Unless you hit it big and get famous, you know. So I come to this realization that I got to start figuring something out for my future. And, you know, that's when I start researching all this stuff about how I'm going to go about it. So when I came back on the road, initially the idea was to just stack money, just to get rid of all my bills, run on the road, and just stack money. And I did that for, you know, about the first, 8 months, something like that. I just kind of saved money, you know, saved and saved and saved. And bought my GMC Yukon from a friend of mine in cash. Spent a bunch of money on my son and making sure he had all the music stuff that he needs, because he's a musician as well. And then I started looking into retirement stuff. And that's when I found the Roth IRA, and I decided that it was better for me to start investing rather than just saving. Prior to that, I was just... I had two things. I had a savings account, and then I would take money out of the savings account and put it in an envelope that I kept in here. And I had thousands of dollars in this envelope. And that's about around the time when I bought my truck and spent all the money in the envelope, basically. And then, you know, I've been trying to come up with a 5-year plan for the last year. And I've gone through several iterations of that. And, you know, one of the reasons I want to talk about that is because, you know, this plan has changed and evolved over the last year, and I'm still not really sure what the ultimate goal is going to be. So I know that as somebody who is pushing 50, I don't really have time to build up a proper retirement that's going to sustain me. Like with my type 2 diabetes and stuff, I'm not going to be able to do this for all that long. I mean, I'm already kind of cheating the system by basically fasting and eating salads right before I have to take a DOT physical, so that because they test for sugar in your urine. So if you're a diabetic, they can tell. So you have to kind of cheat that, because the truck driving industry is really serious about diabetics. You know, now I don't take insulin, which is almost pretty much guarantees you can't drive a truck anymore. But I do have type 2 diabetes, so I have to try to manage it with diet and stuff like that, which is pretty much impossible on the road. So the point is that I'm not going to be able to do this forever. You know, I may not be able to do this until I'm 60. And I don't really want to keep doing this until I'm 60. So, you know, the plan, the beginnings of the plan was that I was going to stack a whole bunch of money, and then I was going to open a business, okay? And because I've got such a background in music, and I know a lot about it and about recording and stuff, the plan was to open a jam complex where bands can rent rooms, and there would be a studio attached to that, so that, because starting a recording studio, a lot of them go under because they don't make enough money. But if you have a jam complex where bands rent rooms, not only do you have income to support the studio through that, but you also have built-in clients that are already there that you can draw from to support the recording side. So that was the initial plan, okay? And then it started drifting more towards, well, maybe that's not such a safe bet, and maybe I should just like save and buy a house in cash. And so I was looking into, you know, where can I buy a house for a decent price and stuff, and where the state where I was born, the area where I was born on the Gulf Coast in Mississippi, you can buy a house there for 60 grand. Like 60 grand, you can get you a pretty nice little 2-bedroom house 5-6 blocks from the beach. And so that was the second iteration of the plan, was that I was going to save and do that. And now I'm kind of at an in-between spot where I'm still contemplating opening jam rooms. and I'm also still contemplating buying a house in cash. And I'm starting to contemplate actually maybe financing a house. The problem is that I don't do credit. I've never done credit. I've never had a credit card. Okay. I have some negative things on there, like some old hospital bills and a student loan, but I don't have any positive things on there. So one of my things that I'm hoping to do over the next year or so is get a secured credit card, start building my credit score up a little bit, and get to a place where maybe I could finance a house if I wanted to finance one. And then still thinking about opening these jam rooms. Now, jam rooms, a lot of you probably, what is that? That's a thing, and at least there in Texas, like every jam complex has pretty much got a waiting list and packed. So it's almost like however many rooms you can build, you can get them filled up. And, the math that I've done and, my knowledge of construction and stuff like that, I could do a lot of the building myself. But anyway, so that brings us to now, and that's pretty much where I'm at, is like stacking money. And I'm just stacking it in the form of retirement accounts and cash accounts and trying to build money this way. So when I talked in that last, I think it was the last video, about how, if you do this the way I'm doing it, you can pull your money out of the cash account for, and pay your 15% long-term capital gains tax. You can pull your contributions out of your Roth IRA and get you a big old wad of money and still have your gains in there to trade with. That's kind of, at least right now, the way my strategy feels like it's heading toward. It's toward keeping on maxing out this Roth IRA, okay, at least for the foreseeable future, for the next 2 or 3 years, and then keeping on dumping money into this long-term account, okay, and then at a certain point, I'm going to probably cash all that in and start a business or buy a house or both. I haven't exactly decided yet. But the plan basically is to bring myself to a place in life to where I have some type of an income that will sustain me through retirement, something that I could pass to my son, who's also involved in music, and then also to get a place to live that's paid for, okay? And that's where I'm at. I need to do both of those things. And so all of this trading and investing is a means to that end. Like, I'm not trying to get rich here, okay? I'm just trying to build up enough so that I can have a fairly comfortable retirement. If that means just paying off a house and having a home studio and then driving some Uber and Lyft and doing some mixing and mastering to sustain myself, then that's what I'll do. If I'm able to start a business and get a house and have those two interact with one another, then that's what I'd prefer to do. I'd prefer to have some kind of a business that I enjoy and a paid-for house, and that's where I'd like to be. And so I'm working towards that goal, guys. And that's basically who I am. It's who I am now. I've had a lot of crazy, wild experiences in my life. I've lived through poverty. I've lived through, good times and bad times, like all of us have. But, I've come to a place in my life now where I'm solely focused on getting to a place in the next 5 to 10 years, hopefully within the next 5 years, to where I can stop doing this daily grind, and the daily grind will be something that I enjoy, that has something to do with music, and and live out the rest of my days in relative happiness. And you don't have to shoot for some lofty goal of being a millionaire or something. I'm just shooting for a way to die happy, basically. And that's what I'm doing. And the YouTube channel here is, mainly to give me something to do during that time period, and maybe to help some other people to accomplish a similar goal. Like I said in that last video, I'm not here for millionaires. I'm here for you regular people, maybe you can learn something from what I'm doing, or maybe, something that I'm doing can help you along your path. But I'm going to say right now that if you're younger, you really need to start doing the Roth IRA, and like doing it in a way that's more focused for your future. If I would have started this when I was in my 20s or 30s and started building this Roth IRA, I could have had a really good retirement. And as it stands right now, like I said, I don't really have the time to build up a really good retirement. So I kind of have to focus on other means that are going to sustain me. So this investing is kind of a means to that end. It's not necessarily that I'm trying to build up $1 million to retire on. I'm trying to build up something that I can do for a lot less than that will sustain me through retirement. And so that's where I'm at, guys. And hopefully this video just kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of where I'm coming from and my goals, and lets you know a little bit more about me. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel.